Hi, this is Henry Sanders from Madison 365 for another episode of Real Talk, and I have someone who's really important today. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody.
I'm
Jen Cheatham, the superintendent of the Madison School District.
You are important. You're important.
Thank you.
You are in the schools, and I think everything in Madison revolves around the schools.
I do too.
And so we have a lot to talk about. You're like the educational mayor of the city. Do you feel that pressure sometimes?
I feel an enormous sense of responsibility. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
I just have to be my authentic self every day, right? Every day is a new day, right? I wake up, look at myself in the mirror and say, we got this, Jen.
Right.
I stay grounded in my values, and I've got a great family and support network around me, which is important.
Yes. Oh, yeah, but how old is your boy, right?
He's almost 7. He would say he's 6 3/4.
Yes. My daughter just turned 9 today.
Aww.
And so she's
Happy
9 going on
birthday.
15. Yes, happy birthday.
I hear
Savannah.
that. Happy birthday.
And so I totally get that. So I get it. And you have a son who's a person of color, kid of color, right?
Yeah.
I'm just bringing that up because I know that's part of your experience, right? It's part of your journey of your intimacy with the schools. And when you hear people of color having concerns about the schools, on some level, even though you're a white woman,
Yeah.
it's still real for you because you have a child of color who's in the schools, right? So you still have some intimacy to it, right?
Yeah, I mean, we all bring multiple identities, right, to our work.
Mm-hmm.
I bring mine as a teacher, right? I love this profession, right? I'm so passionate about it. I think it's more important than ever.
Mm-hmm.
I bring my identity as a mom, and as a white mom raising a child of color, no doubt, which means I don't understand everything that he's going through, but I'll tell you, my sense of empathy, right, my empathic mindset as an educator has become much deeper as a result of parenting,
Right.
and of course being a wife too.
And
Yeah.
Yeah, you said that last. That's what my wife would do. My wife would say, I'm the least important, right? I mean, the kids, everyone else, whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
a lot's going on in the school right now. We've had some of the incidents with students and teachers.
Yeah.
We have school board meetings. But I want to start with the Black excellence because you and I and many others got in front of a press conference and talked about Black excellence. I was super excited about it and still am super excited about it because it changes the narrative of how historically we have talked about our kids, our Black kids in schools. I think it changes the narrative, how kids think about themselves. I think it changes the narrative, how teachers think about the kids.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a statement that's powerful, right? But I had an interview with M. Adams
Yeah.
from Freedom Inc. and she challenged me a little bit about the narrative. She got the narrative part, but she's like, where's the impact behind Black excellence?
Yeah.
So why don't you update us on Black excellence, where we started and where you think we are now with it?
Yeah, we, as you know, Henry, because you were there at the press conference, last year we took the whole year to think about where we are as a school district in our community, and rewrote our district's strategic framework, which is our plan of improvement, so that it wasn't just my plan or the district's plan, but the community's plan, right? What do we want for our children? And that central commitment to Black excellence emerged from that process. And what I heard from teachers, parents, students, alike, and we really centered the voices of people of color in that process, was that we had to get out of this paradigm of trying to close the achievement gap through kind of a deficit view focused on intervention of struggling students, and instead just completely embrace a different kind of paradigm, right? One that assumes from the beginning that children are inherently capable, right? That children are inherently brilliant and creative, and that it's our job at the classroom level and at the systems level to cultivate, right, their inherent brilliance, right? This is about access to deep and rich learning. I mean, I was in these conversations, Henry, with students, African American students in particular. I asked them, like, what do you need from us? And what they kept saying repeatedly is, give us opportunities to be engaged in deep and rich learning, right, about the world around us. We want to interrogate it. We want to understand it. We want to change it, right? That was inspiring to me. And that is how the concept of Black excellence in MMSD was born. The other part of it was that we have a lot going on as a district, a lot that is good and a lot that will serve Black students well. And we knew that we would need to work alongside the Black community in Madison to make sure that our strategies are even stronger, right? To introduce new thinking about how Black excellence can be cultivated in Madison. And a lot of that focused on healthy identity development, right? Spaces for Black students to be together, right, and support for one another that don't exist yet, not at scale in Madison. So where we are this year is Nichelle Nichols, who you've interviewed before, and
what's up, fam?
yeah, I guess her family and friends.
Yeah.
She has been working to create a coalition to help inform future strategies to support and cultivate Black excellence. The work this year has unfolded a little differently, which I think Nichelle has talked to you about before. I think we originally thought in the fall we were going to create this coalition, we were going to get it off the ground, we were going to come up with these recommendations and get them going. And because of the events of this year, it's been organic is the word that I'll use. We have the coalition, but Nichelle is also staying connected with lots of different community groups to keep this work informed and going. We're still on track for those recommendations to come to the board at the end of this year, and we're still on track to putting the top recommendations into action next year. But it's just been coming to life a little differently than we expected.
Yeah. A lot has happened since we've talked. I mean, a lot.
Right.
So, someone who grew up in a school district, went to Madison School District, went to Mendota Elementary, and
All right.
Mendota, on the north side. All the stuff that's happened with the racial slurs, the teachers, and the fighting, and all the incidents. In my time in Madison, I can't think of it being something that is public.
Yeah.
But however, if I talk to most of my friends who grew up in the Madison school system, they've clearly seen stuff happen to them like this historically. Like, I have a friend who, we always say we survived the schools.
That's
like,
right.
So this has happened. This is nothing new. It's new for the public to know about, right?
I think so.
So, one, I think the public's caught off guard hearing all these type of racial slurs. As a superintendent of a school who clearly cares, you have clearly your passion is coming through. How do you address those issues to let people know that this is not getting out of control? Like, we have this under control. Two, that your babies are safe in our schools.
Yeah.
And the flip side, telling the white people, hey, look, there's no reason to be running off to wherever Madison School District are safe for you. Like,
Right.
There's all these different complex issues going on at the same time. How do you address that bigger issue of these teachers and fighting and slurs, and how do you deal with that? Like,
Yeah.
how do you have a plan around to deal with something like that?
My job in part is just to hold the complexity of it all, right? Which I try to do. I think that just to get back to the district strategy, when we started this year, we knew, building on the work that we've done these past 5, that we not only wanted to hold this concept of Black excellence at the center, learn together what that means for us, and collectively enact strategies to cultivate it. We knew we needed to become an anti-racist organization, right, from top to bottom, which is That's not something you just do in a day, right? That is a journey. But we made an explicit commitment to doing so. Those things are related, but they are different, right? Right? Being an anti-racist organization is about making intentional decisions to no longer uphold ways of working that privilege some people over others. And cultivating Black excellence, right, is about deep and rich learning, right? Those things, both of those things have to happen if either of them are going to happen. And, I've been doing so much listening to people these past months, right? Just being in community, small scale and larger scale. And the question I keep asking everybody is, from your perspective, what do you think is going on in Madison right now, right? I'm just trying to make sense out of what we're seeing. In addition to that, our team has been leaning on some frameworks that exist, right? Like Dismantling Racism, for example, has an amazing framework to help organizations understand what it looks like and feels like to go through the kind of transformational change that we're going through. And what I am seeing and what I believe is that this is the work. This is what it looks like and sounds like to be doing the work. Once you've made an explicit commitment to being an anti-racist organization, right, to dissembling those ways of working and rebuilding new systems and structures, hope happens, right? You felt hope at the beginning of the year. I did too.
Yeah.
Right? Especially from people of color who are thinking maybe
The
they're
Black
actually
excellence set
going
the right
to,
tone. Yeah, for sure.
right?
No
Maybe
question.
they're going to actually follow through on this. And then when you get into the work, I think a lot of this has surfaced. I don't think it's new. I don't think it's a Madison problem. I think this is an everywhere problem. But I think it's being surfaced because we made the commitment, the explicit commitment. And people are stepping up and saying, well, hold on a second, this is what I saw, right? This doesn't seem like it's okay. And quite honestly, the school district is laying it on the table too, right? Rather than trying to sweep it under the rug, we're, I think, trying to own it, right? And be more public ourselves.
So how did the school district, because you've been here for 5 years?
This is my sixth.
6 years, okay.
Yeah, I just finished
So
my
how did
sixth.
the school district deal with these incidents before? Because again, going back when I grew up, I never heard of this stuff bringing to the surface.
Right.
Why is it being brought to the surface now? Is it something that you're doing, or it's just popping up on its own? Like what's going on?
My theory is that because we've made this really bold and explicit commitment that people, right, parents, staff members, students are surfacing it, right? So it's not that we were hiding it before, but it wasn't being, surfaced quite in the way that it's been surfaced more recently. So I think that's part of it. And because it's being surfaced, it's creating this feeling of disequilibrium, right? Like everybody is feeling off balance, which is natural, right? The fact that we're feeling off balance because of that disequilibrium, we're trying to look for quick fixes. We're pointing blame at one another. Well, who are the good guys? Who are the bad guys? Right? Right? We're getting ourselves into this good-bad dichotomy, which is not healthy, but it is part of the process. The question that I have now is how do we move ourselves together as a school district and a community and build the relational trust with one another where we can stay in this conversation together, right? The N-word incidents are really interesting. I mean, I'm not going to speak on any one, but kind of the pattern, right?
Right.
And I think it was reported in the newspaper that those incidents weren't necessarily about a teacher calling a student that word, but using it in a student's presence. I think what's interesting about that pattern is the conversation that's arisen has been all about intent. Well, what was the teacher's intent, And I think that's an important conversation to have, no matter what the incident is, right? If a student has been harmed, right, That's the most important thing. Let's understand why and how the student was
Yeah.
harmed.
I agree with that.
Right?
I'm actually shocked, just from our platform, how many teachers emailed us, contacting us, posting that stuff on Facebook, who were defending the teachers.
Yeah.
And they didn't put any, you can tell they weren't concerned about the impact how it had on a child.
Yeah.
And I can tell you stories of how this has impacted children who've gone through this. Like, you could, like, just community, we talk about some stuff going on with these kids. And so there is a disconnect, right? And I think you have the teachers who are worried about protecting whatever they're trying to protect. Because I think a lot of these teachers know the other teachers and say they're good people,
And,
right?
and they are.
Right?
Right.
And so,
Yeah, they may be.
right, and they're going through this stressful situation, whatever that might be. And then you have these kids who are dealing with this. But my biggest concern that's happened through all this is I don't think we put enough emphasis on the impact
Yeah.
of the kids,
Right.
And the impact of, no matter what your intent was by saying this word, the impact that had on that child, when that child's supposed to feel safe in a safe environment, is key to me. So what do you do, or what can you as a superintendent to, because look, these teachers are doing God's work.
Absolutely.
There's no question about that. But also to put them in a sense to understand your words have impact. You're in a position of power.
Yep.
A lot of these kids don't come from safe places anyways.
Yeah.
They want to feel safe. And if they hear that from a teacher that's supposed to educate them, supposed to keep them safe, that dynamic. So how do you let teachers know that that's not okay? Like, how do you educate them on knowing that power dynamic and impact versus intent?
Yeah, I think we're in the middle of that right now. I think that we have certainly messaged that repeatedly, but this is where I think that we all, and it's not just about these incidents, right? This is one example, right, of how
This is a symptom showing up, right? It's symbolic of
a larger
issue.
challenge,
Yeah,
right? But I think this is just pointing to the need for us in, as educators, in brave spaces together, to unpack, right, our own racial identities, the assumptions we make about the world around us, what it means about how we build trusting relationships with students, especially students of color. I know that many of our schools have created spaces already to talk specifically about the racial slurs and the impact that they have on students. I think that's really helped many teachers better understand this issue of impact. And we've got more work to do. I think we're in this phase right now, Henry, of pain and blame and not knowing the answer for sure, which again, I think is a natural stage of this work. And our job right now is to create these spaces for trust building among one another where we can disagree, right? We have to be able to talk this through and do it in a compassionate and caring way that is not about blame, but about deep understanding.
And try to grow together, I hear you
We got to
say.
grow together.
So
yeah.
do teachers do any type of diversity training? Do they
Yeah, and let me just add one more thing. I believe our teachers can do it, right? I know as a white female teacher, right, who was a teacher at heart, I know for a fact that we can do this. I believe in the people who choose this profession. So one of the actions I actually shared with our community is that we've been doing professional development on racial equity, implicit bias, and we're going to continue and not only broaden that professional development, but deepen it in the coming years. That was already part of our plan. This has created more urgency, and quite honestly, I think real desire from our staff to do the work. Which is wonderful. It positions us well to do the work in the upcoming year. We are partnering with the YWCA on that work, which is wonderful. They're a terrific partner for us. In the past, we've partnered with this group called the National Equity Project as well. We'll continue to work with them, but when it comes to doing the kind of deep work with teachers and staff. We'll be working mainly with the YWCA as our major thought partner.
Vanessa over there, they do great
Vanessa,
work.
yeah, they do great work.
So do you, it's interesting, so Michael Johnson, you clearly know from the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah.
You know, he was in Cincinnati, he's moving back. Now, he's back now. And his family's on the way moving back. And one of the things that I think they're concerned about is in Cincinnati, they have black teachers.
Yeah.
And I think for his son, having black male teachers has changed his whole way of thinking.
Yeah.
And so coming back here, the kids' biggest concerns is trying to have teachers of color
Yeah.
who look like them, who can communicate them, who have a bond with them that they felt they didn't have here before. And I think that is, it's listening to Michael and his family, like really go through this, like what schools do we go to? How do we do this? And the kids like, hey, I have these black teachers now. Do you have a game plan to get more teachers of color in the school district? Is there a recruitment plan? Like,
Yeah.
what are we trying to do? Because I think the school was 55% of kids are kids of color now in your schools, right? Is it that high?
Yeah, it's actually higher than that.
58% maybe. So what do we do to get teachers here who look like some of these kids, who could bond and might not have to go through some of that training that the other teachers have to go through?
Yeah, it is incredibly important. I mean, we know it from our practical experience, right? It seems obvious, but the research plays out or clearly points to the fact that having a black teacher even just once in elementary school makes a huge positive impact.
Yeah, I only
on
had
a
two
student's life.
teachers my whole time going to the school district. Miss Stanford, who now runs DPI.
Yeah.
There's another woman, I think her name was Miss Hill. I can still remember her.
Yeah.
Then I had like Milton Pike, who was the principal at East.
That's huge.
Right?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
You know, Mr. Scott and those guys around him, but he wasn't actually a teacher for me. So I didn't have a lot out of
Yeah.
all my years going through the school system.
And there are lots of kids who've never even had one, right? So this is a big deal. Yeah, we've been working on it for quite some time and outperforming, believe it or not, when it comes to hiring staff of color, right? When it comes to the pool of people available here in Wisconsin. And that's in large part because we have a better screening and selection process than we used to have that's competency-based. We have better recruitment materials and recruitment strategies than we did in the past. And we have grow our own programs that are starting to, bear fruit. We're actually getting staff members promoted into teacher positions. But I'll tell you, Henry, I believe this to my core, that the most important strategy, it seems like a long game strategy, but I think it'll be the fastest strategy, is getting our own students to become our future teachers. That is the solution. I mean, 5 years from now, right, you could have cohorts, and we will, of students coming back to us as our future teachers. And I think the health of our community and our school district, it depends. It depends on this, our own students becoming our future teachers and staying in Madison.
That is actually good to hear, because I think a lot of people who grew up in Madison, and we historically think, you know what, the school district doesn't hire us. There's, people here don't hire people who grew up here.
Right.
The government, not just
Local
school district.
candidates. Yep, I hear
It's
it.
never, the local candidates never get the job. It's
Right.
always someone moving out from Chicago or
Yeah, I
Philadelphia
know.
or somewhere else moving in here, and they get the jobs.
Yep.
It's never the people who actually grew up here, which...
Focusing on local candidates is probably the most important thing we can do.
And it's so important because to be a person of color in Madison, growing up here, it's different than growing up in Chicago or Atlanta. You have to have a different skill set.
I agree.
You have to know how to navigate differently. You have to know how to, if you want to thrive, there's techniques you have to do to thrive. Like there's
Yep.
certain skill sets you have to survive in a majority white setting that other people don't have to deal with if they're in a majority black or Latino areas coming in
yeah.
here, right?
Yeah.
So it just makes sense. Well, why are we not tapping the people who grew up in the culture, who at least know the culture? I know
doubt.
Madison better than 90% of people ever would know it because
Yeah.
I grew up here. I went through
Yeah.
the school. Like I have an intimacy with the school system that most people never have.
I'll tell you, Henry, it's interesting that you say that because we have done a lot of work diversifying both the senior team the central office leadership team and the principal team over these past 5 years. And there is no doubt that the leaders of color that we've recruited from other places have struggled the most in this community. And it's not entirely their fault, right? I mean, this is...
It's different. I mean, Madison's just a different area.
But we do have a program for high schoolers to become future teachers. It's called Team Scholars.
Okay.
The UW-Madison helped us create it several years ago. We've got some amazing students of color at the UW as we speak who all want to become teachers still in Madison. They're still on track to come back to us. And we're growing those cohorts every year. So I think it's a really big deal. That is the solution.
I think it would make a drastic change just because I know kids whose parents I know who are in the schools. I have a relationship with these kids.
Yeah.
I might not with them, but I know their parents, right? It's just a different dynamic.
Yeah, it's huge.
Let me change the subject a little bit. So
Yeah.
now women are in control. The women are now in control of the school system. Like,
that's right.
You have to be excited about that, right? I mean, as
great.
superintendent, I get to say all the right political stuff, but right. Women are in control. Right?
I'm genuinely psyched about it.
Oh my gosh! Like,
And
what do you do
more
with that?
Women and women of color, right?
Strong
it
women
is
of color too. Very strong, opinionated women of color, like who won't back down.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? Like, are you excited about that? Are you nervous about that? I mean, like, where are you at with that? Like,
Well, I got to tell you, Henry, I see, even though we only had 3 seats of 7 change, I see this as a totally new school board. And, right, like the dynamics change across the board when you introduce that many new members to the board, which is, to me, a huge opportunity. The former board has treated me well over these years. We wouldn't have been able to make the progress that we did if they weren't there, right? Paving the way and supporting me. So I want to thank them. And my enthusiasm about the future board shouldn't be seen as a disparagement of the previous board. And, we have the agenda that we have set for MMSD for these next 5 years is going after transformational change. In the last 5 years, we were just strengthening the foundation, right? We were righting the ship, and I think it's much stronger as a result. But this next phase, game on, right? Like it is exciting, and we need a board that's prepared to help me lead it, right? And help the school district as a leadership team lead it. I think it's going to be good, but I have my work cut out for me as a
strong personalities.
Yeah, they're going to put me through the paces. I think.
Yeah, I think so.
But that's a good thing.
They're clearly educated. I was so impressed when I interviewed some of the candidates.
Oh God, yeah, right.
I was so impressed with their passion. And they really want to help and they really care.
And I think they get this idea of like deep and rich learning experiences, that the solution isn't just about more intervention, right? It's about unlocking students' capability.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing
and
from
being
the candidates.
Proactive, right? Being proactive and having a longer, deeper conversation about what that means. Do you think having all women on the school board, do you think that it'll give you a different perspective of how you see things around the schools? Do you think like I would just think, imagine being in all women having conversations about this has to be a different way than having these men up there trying to like put their perspective on. I think it's just going to have a different conversation of tone of how we actually get things done. I just think that the tone conversation just be different, right? I know TJ when he was on, he definitely had his tone, and I just think it'd be interesting to see how the conversations happen in the public and the discourse happens with all these strong women from different backgrounds with different beliefs. I'm so excited just to see it from a political junkie standpoint.
Well, I think they've got an opportunity, I think, in these next couple of months to figure out who they want to be as a board, right? Every year we end the year with a day-long retreat with the school board. That's in June. That's going to be great because that will be the place after 2 months in where they're going to be able to set kind of a new standard. How do we want to be together, right? How do we want to work together as a team? How do we want constituent service to look, right, in the future? I think that is one of the most important roles school board members play. And there's an opportunity there to think differently about engaging the community that they serve and centering the voices of the people who most need to be centered. Yeah.
That's a good way to say it, because the school board meetings have been, hostile.
Right.
Confrontational.
Well, I wouldn't say hostile, but that's your word.
Depends who you ask. Depends who you ask. I think Dave Blasker would say hostile. I think they were confrontational. I think on purpose. I think sometimes they're confrontational on purpose. Yeah. How do you think that plays out now? And let me take a step back. How do you think that these school board meetings have gone before? Now we'll go with stronger women on there. Not just, we have some very strong women of color on the board.
Yeah.
How do you think this is going to play out now with Freedom Inc. and other people coming to these board meetings? Do you think that conversation will be as confrontational, knowing that they have really 3 strong allies now on the board? Like, how do you think that plays out now? I'm just curious.
I don't know yet. I mean, this year the school board meeting space was not created for deep interaction, right, between board members and community. That's just not how it is designed. And that's a whole other conversation to have. And the presence of Freedom Inc., their repeated demands for change have been, like, that space has just not been a great space to hold it, right? It's been really difficult. And I think we've been trying to figure out the balance because in many ways, the boardroom, traditionally in all the years I've been there, has not been filled with people of color, right? I mean, it's been often nearly empty, right, with very few public speakers. And so in many respects, having this level of engagement and interest and push has been really healthy, right, and phenomenal. It has been really hard. So I agree with you that there is an opportunity here, an opportunity for the board to think about how to use not just the public board meeting, the regular meeting, but other spaces for engagement, right, to center the voices of the students and families that they serve.
To feel like they have access,
right?
to feel like they have a voice.
Yeah, and they can actually have dialogue and interact. I just think there's an opportunity there. And ultimately, Freedom Inc. has a very specific set of demands. I mean, what they choose to do will largely depend on, I think, the extent to which they believe that this board is willing to make progress towards meeting those demands, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm feeling very optimistic about the future.
Yeah, and again, we had M. Adams on here, and I was just amazed how thought out and strategic.
She's brilliant.
Like brilliant, seriously brilliant. Do you think that now that you have more women of color, more women on the issue, I think, who have some connection with Freedom Inc., who she was really big about not having police in the schools. Where do you think that plays out now? Like, where is that? What's going on with the police in the schools right now?
Yeah. Well, that's a very good and practical question because the new board may or may not have to make a decision about that in the near future. I mean, the board that is just now turning over, the previous board did, they voted, right? They actually made a decision on that. They approved a contract with some pretty significant changes, largely in response to what they'd heard about concerns about police in schools. But they did recommit to keeping the contract and keeping police in schools with those significant changes. And so now it's in the city's hands. And we'll have to see whether or not the city, especially with the mayoral change, right, wants to forward that to the city council or not. And And if it's not, then our board will have to take the issue up again and figure out what they want to do in the near term. Obviously, there are the decisions of today, and then there are the decisions of the future. This board certainly could think seriously about a path towards change, right? A path towards a new way of keeping students safe. We haven't even met to talk about that yet, so
that's exciting.
So we'll see.
Exciting.
Yeah, I think so.
It is. So I have two more questions for you. One, before we go, give us your 3 priorities for the rest of this year for the school district, like the 3 highest things you think you need to be focused on right now.
Building relational trust. I'm very focused on internal work, especially among the staff. I think that's really important. The work that we're doing with Black Excellence and the Coalition, getting clear on those recommendations so we can move that work forward in the year ahead, and working with this new school board and setting them up for success. Those are my top 3.
Those are good. And lastly, I asked all the school board candidates this last question. Okay, so I said, if a mom of color came to you and she was thinking about she was worried about putting her kids in the Madison School District versus another area.
Yeah.
Knowing all the issues that they've been hearing about in the school district, Madison Metropolitan School District, how do you sell them? What do you sell them on why the Madison School District is the right place for them?
I would say that the Madison School District is one of very few school districts across the country that have made an explicit commitment to being an equitable organization, and one that is committed to making sure that Black students thrive in school. It doesn't mean we're there yet, and we need to be partners with every single parent to make sure that that happens. But that is a big deal. I want parents to stay with us because that's something that we can all be proud of. I think that's what I would say.
Awesome. And the reason I just want people to know we're talking about Black kids the most because they're the ones who are doing this. They're struggling the most in the school. So we're not excluding the Latino kids or white kids at all. I just want people to understand that. The Black kids are the ones struggling the most at this point in time.
Absolutely. Right? And I think you heard me say a little bit about this at the beginning of the year. Part of this is we believe all of our fates are linked, right? If Black students aren't thriving, are any of our children actually thriving, right? Can we be thriving as a community? I don't think we can. Right. So this is essential for Black students, but important for every single one of our children.
Well, good luck. I don't envy you at all in your job.
Hey!
It's a tough job.
I love it, though.
I know you do. I know you love it. Your passion comes through, and yeah, you can see the intensity in your eyes when you talk about it. You can tell that you really, really care about what's going on. It's just a tough job. And the area that's growing so much, schools are changing so much, culture's changed so much in Madison, and everything centers around the schools. Where the school district goes, Madison goes. That's how important your job is.
Well, it's about our children, right?
It is about the future.
Nothing is more important than the future of our children.
Yeah. The babies. Right. So thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Henry.
It wasn't that bad, was it?
No.
Okay, all right. Thank you for another episode, and we'll see you next time.